Hello everyone, all students grade 12. I hope this video find all students well. Welcome to today's video where we are going to be considering the structure of cell and also inheritance. First of all, found more basic structures that you must understand all this to start with me inheritance. So we begin this. I want to talk today about inheritance, and I start with you from inside the cell structure that found inside nucleus, the first point, the first structure called nucleus. Inside the nucleus, chromosomes. Inside chromosomes, more genes, and inside gene, alleles. All these points, all these structures, you can say about these points basic structure inside the cell. So I give you the function, the role for each one. Nucleus, that means basic structures that control all activities that happen inside the cell. Inside nucleus, chromosomes, the strands. You can say another way, another meaning for threads like DNA molecules that have more genes. Genes that you can say small part length from DNA molecules that codes to produce kinds of proteins. And genes have more forms. Forms, you can say alternative forms that produce alleles. So found another kinds from the cells. Number one, number two. Two cells that produce from cell division called haploid and diploid. Each one have one characteristic, have one feature. Haploid with one set of chromosomes, 23 chromosomes. And another diploid have two sets of chromosomes, chromosomes such as 46 chromosomes. Example, inside the human body, sperm. And inside the human body, example, zygote. You must distinguish between two types from cells, haploid and diploid. 23 chromosomes and 46 chromosomes, such as sperm, the simplest part, and also egg inside the human body. And on the other side, found zygote, 46 chromosomes, 2N, 26, 1N, one set of chromosomes. This basic structure that you must understand all this point to start with your inheritance. And also found another part for gene. Have two kinds. One type homozygous and heterozygous. Homozygous, heterozygous, two kinds from genes. This number one, homozygous, I give one example. Large and small letters. Homozygous, A, the identical, and also different A is small. Large letter and small letter. And the key definition for homozygous, that means that having identical alleles. For example, A, large, of one particular gene. And the heterozygous, that means different alleles. A small, that found, can say, in form G. Start to understand another point for genotype and phenotype. Nucleus, to consequences for this informations. Nucleus, inside the cell, chromosomes, gene, alleles, and also two types from cells, haploid, diploid, and with one set of chromosomes and two sets of chromosomes, 23 chromosomes, sperm, and 46. It is summary for this point. Gene inside the chromosomes, the same, this figure to understand this point. This figure, chromosomes, two chromosomes have one centromere that from two chromatids found centromere that join, that combine with two chromatids. This strands of chromosomes that have more genes inside. The same this part. Chromosomes, strands have more genes, and inform alleles. So I give you another part for genotype and phenotype. Genotype and also phenotype is also another definition, key definition. Genotype, gene, can say genetic information, this number one, and also phenotype, features. Features, we can say another way, another meaning for characteristics. Short, tall, black, white, all these features, phenotype and genotype. And later I explain this point for you. Start to move another part for inheritance and monohybrid. Monohybrid is very important point, and you must understand this point for monohybrid. Monohybrid, that mean one characteristic and that's studied by the genetic diagram. But I give you a small history about inheritance and monohybrid for the mechanism of inheritance that was discovered by one person who had been made and discover all these points, discover all this characteristic by kind of the plant called bee plant that start to study all these points in his garden. This scientist called Mendel that start study one kind from the plant, and this person who made the very important discoveries about inheritance. Mendel that start study and was studied this points with another kind from the plants, pea plant, and start from one kind, tall, pure, example pure breeding, tall, and another short. The same pure breeding short, you can say the same characteristic dwarf. So listen to me to understand the results. Pure breeding tall, pure breeding dwarf, fertilization between them produce this parent and gametes and produce one first generation, F1, first filling generation, that all seeds that produce from the plant that harvest plants, and all this is tall. This the first generation, but the second generation for after flowering plants, after flowering, and make self reproduction. After self reproduction and flowering this plant, produce two kinds from the plant, 3 to 1, 3 tall and 1 dwarf for this point. So this example for monohybrid, and I give you example, I give you information and explain all these points. Continue for this point about two kinds of cells. Found 2 points. You must distinguish between two kinds of cells. This number 23 chromosomes and this 46 chromosomes. So each one have one number from chromosomes. Number of chromosomes 23 chromosomes, and the number of chromosomes 46 chromosomes. This is called haploid. And you can say this point diploid. You must distinguish between two parts for the haploid and diploid that have one set of chromosomes, one set only of chromosomes. So it's called haploid, and it's have two sets of chromosomes. It's called diploid. So you must distinguish between haploid and diploid. This kind from cells that produced from one kind from cell division called meiosis. Start with another information, basic information about inheritance. Homozygous gene have two kinds. I give an example. I explain one example for this point. That's alleles. Before you must see these points. Alleles gene. Alleles gene. AA that forms alleles. A small. Two large letters and one large letter and also small letters. To distinguish between two alleles, this called homozygous. This heterozygous. That means having identical alleles of one particular gene, AA, and this different alleles for any gene. So all these basic structures from the nucleus inside chromosomes, gene, allele have two parts, maybe homozygous and also heterozygous. And move on another part for the kind of cells. Each one have one set of chromosomes, 23 chromosomes, and also another one, 46 chromosomes. This homozygous and another heterozygous. So I give you another part and explain genotype and also phenotype. Genotype and phenotype, this part that may be genes, and also this point tall, short, you can say phenotype with characteristics. Move another part at the bottom of the page. Haploid and diploid, one set of chromosomes, two sets of chromosomes. One set 23 chromosomes, haploid, and 46 chromosomes, diploid. That two kind from cells, maybe that used for cell division, meiosis, that produce gametes inside the human body. Gene AA have two forms, have two shapes. AA forms allele, homozygous having identical, and also another one AA large and small letters, that heterozygous. I give you one example for inheritance that you can say about this point for mechanisms of inheritance that discovered before chromosomes had been discovered or gene. That it was by knowing one person, knowing Mendel, that who made very important discoveries about inheritance or about genetic information. This for this point, and start with monohybrid, the one characteristics that Mendel studied by one kind from the plant, bee plant in the garden, and produce and have more results from this studying. Start to you from this point, from this monohybrid, start to make inheritance. Monohybrid, this one point about one characteristic for bee plant by Mendel that studied, and start to make genetic diagram, can say crossed between them. Parents tall, pure breeding. Example, pure breeding, tall, and another short. Pure breeding, short. You can say dwarf. The same, this point, another characteristic, dwarf. The same crossed between them produce one first generation seeds. Seeds harvest kind of the plant, and after flowering produce one plant is tall. So the first generations, can say first filial or filling generations. First filial generations, 4 seeds are produced, harvest seeds, and they produce one characteristic tall. After a long time, seeds start to flowering and self reproduction. They produce one kind, they produce 2 kinds from the plant. Some of it tall and another short, dwarf, the same characteristic. This 3 ratio and 3:1. This is the result after self reproduction between the kind of the plants. And Mendel start to make genetic diagram for this point, monohybrid, and I give one example to understand this point. For this point about genetic diagram, inheritance, I explain one example and you must follow me the steps to can make another one. Such as this point, T small, T small. This, you can say tall, and another short. To understand this point about the inheritance, and also for homozygous, this parent, this homozygous, and this homozygous. Before I explain this point, homozygous, that may be the having identical alleles. So follow me. Parent produce gametes, homozygous produce one gametes, the same part, G, large. Maybe I delete this and I give you another color to understand this point, and another one gametes. You can say male and female. Make genetic diagram in first. After fertilization between them, produce one kind from the plant, from the organism, with genetic diagram with the results T large, T small. So it's tall, this first one, first generation. After self reproduction between the first generation produce the same this part. As a result, must make tables from 4 because you need from 2 kinds from this first generation, male and female, T and T. This heterozygous. This homozygous maybe that having identical, and this you can say heterozygous maybe different identical. So different alleles between genes. So you must take genes from this and take genes to gametes and take gametes from this point, T small, T small, this male and this female. Continue to give the results. Start with female and male, T large, T large, T small, T large, T small, and T small. This is the ratio, the first point for the make tables, and start to make genetic diagram and can say make cross between the genes, between alleles to produce the ratio. The result 3:1. So TT tall, and this you can say short. So the ratio 3:1, 3 tall and 1 can say short. This is the first example for monohybrid. At the end of sections, the next period, I give you the second part, the next example about the another inheritance, another genetic diagram, but you must understand this point and make comparison between all these points, and I give you one questions and start to answer these questions at the description of video. At the end, thanks so much. See you soon.